Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh and today we are doing a photo recap of my month of December 2024. I'll be honest with you guys, December is a time of getting your affairs in order and holiday shopping, spending time with family, and just really reflecting on the year that you've had. And so next week there's going to be a full year in review of 2024 on this channel, and I'm excited to share that with you guys. But for this week and for this month of December, I'll be honest, I didn't do a whole lot of photography. I haven't shot a whole lot, and that's okay. I find that December is often a sort of time to take off from taking photos. One element of that is that it is getting colder and colder here in New York City, and I've said it before on the channel, but I'm a very cold person, so I tend to just stay inside. I've been spending my time working on a lot of other projects, some of which I'm excited to share with you guys. There will probably be a video in January about one in particular that I'm very, very excited about. But I do have 5 photos to talk about today briefly in this video. They're kind of an overflow from photos that I took in November. I took them near the end of November and just recently got them developed. And I was going through all these photos and something happened. I was picking my favorite ones and I realized that there was a common thread among all 5 that I picked, which isn't something that normally happens in these recap videos. You'll see what I mean in just a second, but the common thread is windows or looking through windows. And all of these photos I took on a recent work trip to Emerald Isle, North Carolina. And normally when I show you photos in these videos, I tell you what film stock it was taken on, what camera I took it with. But for just sake of getting this video over with, I took all of these photos on Fuji 400 with my Pentax K1000. So basically, with all that little teaser right there, let's just jump right into it. So this was a photo taken at the very beginning of the trip. We ended up flying out while it was raining at LaGuardia, and I took some photos of the raindrops and the moisture collecting on the windows as we were about to taxi out to the runway. This photo in particular doesn't strike any crazy emotions out of me other than sort of whatever the opposite of tranquility is, almost like nervousness. I'm a pretty nervous flyer, even if I don't show it on my face. I do get pretty nervous every time we're about to take off. And taking this photo, it's raining, not ideal. We're about to fly into the air. I'll admit, I was probably a little nervous, but one of the things that maybe helps ground me and bring me back down to reality is taking photos and having something to focus on. You know, so often when I get on a plane, I'll listen to a podcast or just have something to keep my mind occupied. And so as we were sitting there, I saw this wet window and I decided to pull out my camera and take a photo of it. And I deliberately used a wide aperture so as to blur everything beyond the windows. I really wanted to focus on those raindrops. And I know that some people out there probably like the rain. I've never been that type of person to like the rain. When I was younger, the first car that I ever owned was a Land Rover Discovery from 1999. And if I remember correctly, there was this design flaw where it had a sunroof, and the sunroof had a drainage issue. So when it rained, a bunch of water would basically pool up in the roof of the car and eventually just start dripping right down on you as you were driving. It was a terrible experience. Many times I was going on small little road trips, like to Rhode Island or something, and just getting dripped on days after it had rained because all of this rainwater was pooling up in the roof of my car. So I think ever since then, I've had a pretty strong aversion to the rain. And because of that, now when it does rain and I'm inside and nice and comfortable looking out the window, it almost, I don't know, I get that shiver of comfortability like when you're cold and you get under a nice warm blanket. And I am rambling. I don't know that this photo evokes that feeling in me because I feel like it's a bit of conflicting emotions where there's comfort, but there's also the knowledge that I'm looking out of an airplane window. And so there's a little bit of anxiety that comes from that as well. But to be honest, that's most likely just me reading into it. So here we are, we're up in the air now on our way to North Carolina. And from memory, when I was taking photos out the window, I took a bunch of photos of just the clouds and the landscapes below the plane. I'll probably show some of them right here in the video. And I took this photo on my 135mm lens that I have for my Pentax. And I remember just sort of laughing to myself at the sort of subtle comedy of this sign with the arrow saying, "No step and the arrow pointing out to the 36,000 foot drop or whatever. It's almost like when you see a really kind of obvious "don't do that" sign, and you think to yourself, I wonder if someone had to do that in order for that sign to exist. And I know that this no step sign is indicating something else, but I don't know. I just think I kind of like the combination of the two parts of it. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of funny. In my mind, I framed this differently. I'm not entirely sure why I had so much of the window in the foreground that really wasn't supposed to be there. So when I actually got the scan back, I was a little shocked because I remember having my lens like pressed up against the window, but I guess not. But either way, I still think the photo works on its own, and you might not think it's funny, but I still think it's funny. But it's also funny in a sort of morbid or darkly humorous way, and also it also has a bit of hopefulness in it, and a little bit of it's a little uplifting, I don't know. Yet again, I'm rambling. I really kind of had to crunch together 5 photos to talk about in this video, but this one legitimately was one I was pretty happy with, and I think the other ones are okay too. So let's get on to the next one. Okay, so by now you should have noticed that shooting on Fuji 400 is not always ideal. It's not really a film stock that I shoot very often, and in particular the reason I don't shoot with it is because I get some pretty muddy and grainy images that I'm just not usually that happy with, and photos that I just wouldn't really feel comfortable putting in a portfolio. And this photo in particular has that graininess, especially in the blue sky there, but I don't know. Overall, I think it handled the contrast between the light and dark, especially here in the foreground, before we get to the frame within the frame, pretty well. But as I saw in the other 2 photos and the 2 photos that are about to come, there's just sort of this grittiness that I sort of wish wasn't there. But this photo, on sort of a compositional level, is pretty interesting to me. When I did take this photo, I took the meter reading of the outside entirely. I walked up to the window, took the meter reading from there, and then backed up in order to get the frame within the frame. And also having that streak of light diagonally going downward from the left side of frame to the right side of frame, I think really makes this image what it is. And I feel like without that there, this photo becomes way less interesting. And just getting the subtle pop in the shadows right around the edges of the window frame so we can see the red wood and all that texture that comes with it. The one thing that I will say about this photo, and mind you, I do like it, but I do kind of wish there was a little bit more of an interesting subject in the center of it than just that sign that said where we are. If it had some sort of artwork on there, or I don't know, something just more exciting. Maybe if there was a person standing under the sign smoking a cigarette or something like that, that would have been cool too, because while I think that the composition is pretty interesting, it just isn't a photo that brings a lot out of me emotionally speaking, and maybe I could say that it brings me back to my memories of being in Emerald Isle, North Carolina, but that's me being charitable, so I don't know. I guess oftentimes when I'm out shooting, there's the hope that I'm going to get photos back that are going to be sort of like 4-quadrant photos. And if you don't know what the 4-quadrant analogy means, it essentially means that, like in the movie industry, for example, a 4-quadrant movie is one that appeals to all 4 major demographic quadrants of a movie-going audience, male and female, over and under the age of 25. But in the context of maybe photography, the 4 quadrants that I'm looking for are maybe composition. I'll throw in composition and lighting into one quadrant, emotional resonance on a purely objective level, emotional resonance on a purely subjective or personal level, and then general interest in the subject matter. And if you don't like the sound of that, I did kind of just make that up here on the fly. I haven't really put that much thought into what I would consider to be the 4 quadrants of photography. But yeah, that's generally what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a photo that I really love. And while I think this maybe has 2 quadrants checked off, we're missing the other 2. And it's still a decent photo, but at the end of the day, not one that I'm necessarily going to be looking back on years from now and be really proud that I took. So where we were shooting in the last photo was some restaurant that was on this pier where people did a lot of fishing, and this photo was taken in the parking lot of that restaurant. And I had just gotten out of the van and I saw this dog waiting for his or her owners to come back, and they were super chill, and I took I think 3 or 4 photos of them, and this one in particular I think I like the most because they're looking right at me, and just the general absolute calm on their face is really what draws me in. I know I show a lot of photos of cats, especially my own cats, on this channel, and I've had a few photos of dogs on here before. Some of my favorite photos I feel like I've taken are of some dogs. I'll see if I could try to dig some of those up and show those to you, but yeah, I don't know. I was always a dog person growing up. I love dogs. I'm sure I'm going to have a dog at some point in my own adult life. But they're just such fascinating creatures, and really fascinating because of their intelligence, in my opinion. This photo compositionally also acts as a bit of a frame within a frame. We have the white of the car door creating this L around the window. We've also got a decent amount of depth within the image, going from foreground to midground to background. And once again, I think the dog's face just kind of says it all. You know, it's got this disinterested, apathetic sort of done with it all sort of look. Maybe that's kind of how I've been feeling in the latter half of 2024, though I'm trying to stay positive. So yeah, maybe I'm just probably ascribing some of my own emotions and feelings onto this dog's face here, but I really, I feel like I connect with this dog, and I feel like even if for a brief moment we shared a little bit of a connection with each other, and I'm sure that the owners have pictures of this dog. I mean, who doesn't take pictures of their pets? Or maybe I'm the crazy one for taking 200 film photos of my cats over the course of 12 months. But I like to think now that this dog is sort of immortalized in some way, which, you know, I guess you could say is an annoying way to look at film photography. But I really try to look at it whenever I can as a bit of a physical representation of immortalizing someone into the universal and tangible memory of the world. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to stop now before I keep rambling. I'm going to be real quick about this one. This is a photo taken from the plane on our way back to New York, and it's a photo of at least the bottom part of Manhattan and a little bit of Brooklyn right over here. You could also see Brooklyn Bridge Park right here, and you've got Battery Park right over there. You've got a little bit of the corner of Governor's Island, and you could see the Brooklyn Bridge, even if a little bit. To go back to what I was saying about Fujifilm, in particular Fuji 400, not being the best film stock, in my opinion, this photo is just incredibly grainy. And granted, I was taking it from, I don't know, however far I was in the air. But yeah, there's very little detail in here. But, you know, knowing that it's New York, you could sort of get away with that, I think. And we're going to go back to the 4-quadrant analogy from earlier. This is really only about 1 quadrant filled for me, and that's just sort of the emotional connection to it that I have personally, because I've lived in New York now for, going on 6 years, and if you consider the 4 years of college that I did in Long Island, then we could say that I've been here for about 10 years. Yeah, 10 years ago I graduated from high school in Connecticut and then went off to college in New York, and New York has just been this home away from home for a long time now, so I feel very much rooted here. I feel very much connected to this place in a way that I probably didn't feel 5 or 6 years ago. And so, I don't know, every now and then I have to practice gratitude and think about where I am and how grateful I am to actually be here in what some would say is the greatest city on earth. I haven't been to nearly enough cities to make a claim like that. So, you know, certainly it's got its problems, but, you know, it's pretty remarkable for what it is. And also on that note, speaking of things being remarkable, I've mentioned it before, but the idea that all of this was nothing not that long ago, and then all of a sudden it was just this, like it was building upon building, and, you know, life bubbling and buzzing all around, creating so many things that we all take for granted every single day. It really is pretty remarkable. And, you know, taking photos through a bunch of windows, and primarily windows of airplanes, how do I want to put this? It really is just about perspective. Not photography, but life is about perspective. I think that the joys of life come from being able to change your perspective and open yourself up to new ideas or old ideas that have been forgotten to time. Anyway, that's going to do it for December 2024 recap. I know it was a bit of an unusual one from what I typically do. These aren't necessarily photos that I'm absolutely in love with, but that's okay. I'm spending the month working on a lot of other things, putting photography aside just a little bit so that I could work on some other projects. Hint, hint. Be sure to tune in next week for my video that I'm making. It's going to be a bit of a long one about 2024 as a whole. I'm doing a whole retrospective on the entire year. So that should be coming out next week, and then I'm taking a week off after that from making videos, and we will be back to our regularly scheduled programming of videos in January once I've had some time to settle into the new year. I think everyone should kind of take some time to settle into 2025. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to hit the bell to be notified when new videos are released on the channel. You could also support me by going to my print shop and consider buying a print. Don't worry, none of these photos are going to be on that print shop, unless you want them to be, in which case let me know and I will send you a print personally. You can also support me, and this would be a really huge help. You can support me by going to Amazon and consider buying a copy of my book. It's called Ultra Boys. I made a whole video about it. You could watch it. There's like a little trailer for it. I put a lot of myself into that book, and I self-published it through Amazon earlier this year, back in the summer, and it's been selling pretty well, and a lot of you guys have reached out, and I really, really appreciate it. So yeah, consider reading that book, and once again, hint, hint, I've got other projects on the way in the same vein. And last but not least, go ahead and follow me on Letterboxd. The videos I've been making about movies made for photographers have been doing pretty well, and it seems like I've got a bunch of movie buffs that are subscribed to the channel right now. So if you want to talk about movies, here's another hint for a project that I'm working on that I'll be announcing in the new year. But yeah, feel free to follow me on Letterboxd, follow me on Instagram. If you ever just want to like nerd out about movies, I could talk about movies literally all day. So yeah, feel free to hit me up and let's chat about movies. And yeah, I think that'll do it for December. It's been a great month of doing the photo recaps every month. I look forward to talking about the entire year as a whole, and I'll see you all next time.